It's an amazing time to be alive, isn't it? It's an amazing time to be alive. And we've been put in this position because we have the will and the desire and the ability to be raised up, because this nation needs you right now. More than ever, this nation needs you. So let me just give you the basics. I'm Ken Ivory. I'm the president of the American Lands Council. I'm also a Utah State representative. The American Lands Council is leading the charge for local control of our lands by giving our leaders the knowledge and the courage to battle for the only solution big enough to fund education, better care for our environment, and grow the economy locally and nationally. Organizations all over the West, all over the nation have done resolutions supporting this only solution big enough. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to ask you if you want to take a leading role. And I'll pass out some little cards. And I'm also going to ask you to think about what impressed you the most about what you heard tonight. And then if you want to get involved in taking a leading role in hiring and inspiring your leaders that are willing to battle for property and liberty and self-governance, then put your information on the back of this card. Please sign the sheets out there, but if you want to get involved taking an active leading role, if you put your name on the back of the card, I want you to fill out what impressed you anyway, even if you don't want to get involved and take any kind of volunteer role. But if you do, then on the back of the card, give me your information and bring that to me when we're done. Is that fair enough? Is that clear? Okay, good. You've got a couple pieces of information. We're going to talk about these. You got this little card. Do you all have one of these? Does anyone not have one of these? Would you, where did she go? Would you bring some of those out? And then one of these. If you don't have one of these, let's make sure we get these out to everybody. We're going to use the visual aids today as we go. And we'll get going with that. I want to start, let's see, back here. Let me see if I can get this to work. Based on this introduction, I want to start right here. Let's figure out why we're here. Let's figure out what we're doing here. This nation needs you, and let's figure out where we're at. It needs you to, because we have the power in our lands and in communities like this right here. We have the power to protect our land, to provide for our education and our future and our sick and our poor. We have that power, and to prosper. We have that power. Where does it come from? So think of this. I lived in Japan, and W. Edwards Deming was the patron saint of manufacturing in Japan. He said, every system is perfectly designed to achieve the results that it gets. Do we like the results that we're getting? Well, we have a system that is designed to get those results. It wasn't originally designed that way, but it's morphed into that, and we've allowed that system to produce those results. So what do we do about it? Well, here's our system. Let's get back to fundamentals, right? You remember Vince Lombardi at the beginning of every year? Vince Lombardi with the world champion Green Bay Packers. He'd start out with these professionals. He'd hold up a ball, and he'd say, gentlemen, this is a football. And he'd talk about the size and the shape and the weight of the football. And then he'd walk them out and he'd say, gentlemen, mind you, these are the world champion Green Bay Packers. And he'd say, gentlemen, this is a football field. And here are the dimensions, and here's how wide it is, how long it is, and here's the goalposts and how big they are. That's where we would start. Let's talk about the fundamentals, okay? The fundamentals of our power. To secure these rights, governments, plural, are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Where's the power? Power's right here. The power in our system is right here. Now, Washington has intimidation. They don't have power. They don't have real power. There was very, very little power delegated to Washington. But intimidation comes because we tolerate the exercise of something that acts like power. It's not real power. Power is here. And we either tolerate it or we don't. We either exercise our power or we don't. Rights that we don't know are no better than rights that we don't have. So what rights? To secure what rights? Well, it says we hold these truths to be self-evident. Anybody knows that. Self-evident. Everybody knows. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, property. Now, it doesn't say that in the Declaration, does it? That's what the first draft of it said. They didn't want to confuse the slave question with property, but the first draft was life, liberty, and property. And all of the state constitutions said life, liberty, and property. And remember that slide before? To secure these rights, governments were instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Life, liberty, property. In fact, you've got, this is our one and only United States Supreme Court Justice from Utah, George Sutherland. He said, man has 3 great rights, and they're so interconnected as to be a single right. Because you see, if you give a man his life, but you take away from him his liberty, you take away all that makes life worth living. If you give him his liberty, but you take away the property, which is the fruit and the badge of his liberty, you still leave him a slave. Property is the essence of liberty, which is why we're here. Property. Critical. Critical. So now look at this. Does that make any sense at all? In a nation established on the principle of governments that exist, the very reason they exist is to secure property, which is the essence of liberty, which is why we're alive. Does that make any sense at all? How critical is this? And how important is it if we resolve this? How many other issues does this take down? If we get back to local control of our property, our land access, our land use, our land ownership, how many other issues does that resolve? This is what we're talking about. Now, John Kenneth Galbraith, world-renowned economist in the mid-'80s, said where socialized ownership of land is concerned, only the USSR and China can claim company with the United States of America. And we're going the other way. We have a national government that's acquiring more property. China, there was an article about a month or 2 ago, China said, you know, they discovered that if they give the land to the farmers, pay attention to this, this is really critical. They learned a principle. They learned that if they give the land to the farmers, they're more productive. Foundational principles. So think about this for a second, right? Our very system of government is founded on governments that exist to protect the inalienable rights, self-evident rights of life, liberty, and property. And if we do, and self-governance at the most local level. And if we do that, and we follow that constitutional equation, guess what we get over here on the other side of the equation? We get peace and we get prosperity. Sounds pretty good, right? That worked really well for quite a while. Now, what we're trying to do today is we're trying to ignore this side of the equation and say we still want peace and prosperity. How's that working out? It's not going to work out until we get back to the unprecedented constitutional equation upon which this nation was founded on. And who has the power to do that? Governments are instituted by whom? By the consent of the governed. It's our job. We have no one to blame but us. We're the answer we've been waiting for. Right? This is where we start, okay? Abraham Lincoln said it, right? Government of the people, by the people, for the people. Not of the bureaucracy, by the bureaucracy, for the bureaucracy. We have to understand our system. Those of you in office, running for office, we have to know these things. I want to run back here just a little bit and look at this. I'm just going to run through this kind of quickly. You know this. But let's talk about why it matters. What does it mean to us? And what are the benefits of owning our government? Hiring and inspiring leaders that will battle for what governments exist for, which is to protect life, liberty, property, self-governance, right? So let's look at this for a second. You know this, right? 12 years ago? A couple years ago? I'm just going to go through these kind of quickly, but you know these. This is because we have a federal government that says you can't harvest any trees. And so because of that, we have more trees that grow, more trees that are soaking up water, more trees that are soaking up nutrients, more trees that are competing with each other for sunlight, and consequently, they're not healthy. And consequently, they're dying all over the forest because more trees mean more fuel, which means more fire. That's a pretty hard equation to figure out, right? More trees, more fuel, more fire. I'm going to take a little detour right here, tell you a little story. Last week, I got a call from Commissioner Darren Bushman in Paiute County, Utah. Forest Service called him and said, hey, we want to do a 40, 50,000 acre prescribed burn because we got this beetle kill that's just and we got to eradicate the beetles. And so we got to burn them out. And they said, well, we kind of understand that, but before you just burn all that up, can we go in and harvest anything that's commercially serviceable? Oh, no, you can't do that. That would be a commercial harvest, and we have to do an environmental impact study for years, and there would be litigation for years. Oh, we can't do that. Do you know that up in Heber, Utah, there's a company called Euclid Timbers? They take standing dead timber and they turn it into beautiful homes. Walls 2 feet thick. Reduces the energy consumption of the home by 75%. Standing dead timber. Reduces the energy by 75% instead of burning it up and polluting the air, burning up the animals. We burn up millions of them, hundreds of millions of them in wildfires over the last decade. Destroying the topsoil, so you erode off all the watershed and you ruin that for generations. And you put people to work. In fact, the owner of that company told me, he said he thinks there's as many as 50 million homes where there's standing dead timber in the national forest. Can't touch it. Makes you wonder if the bureaucrats that are managing our land care at all about the lives and the livelihoods of the people on the ground, or if they just want to watch the world burn. Does it matter? It matters. This is just one example. I mean, BLM and all the other things you know about, but just to go through these kind of quickly. I mean, animals, millions of them dying. Protected species, right? In the name of the endangered species, we're burning the animals and their habitat for generations with failed federal policies. What's going to happen with the watershed that comes to Phoenix when those forests are gone? Surely you know, right? You know what's going on in Payson. What happens when that goes? And it's standing there dead. I mean, we know this, right? This is tremendous. You know, the devastation that this is causing. I'm just going to go through these kind of quickly. You guys know recreation, right? The recreation industry's being devastated. People's lives, businesses being impacted. But this is what it looks like today. 12 years later. 12 years later. It still looks, I mean, you've seen that. I grew up in Tempe. A couple years ago, I was driving from Payson to Show Low. I was wondering, what is this? I don't remember this. It looked like a moonscape, exactly right. I said, I don't remember this growing up. They said, oh yeah, that was the fire from 12 years ago. It's still not regenerating. This is happening all over the West. All over the West. That's our water. That's our wildlife. That's our recreation. That's our business. That's our renewable resource that can provide fuel and homes and save energy instead of watching it burn. But remember, power comes from the consent of the governed. Are we consenting to this? Yeah, if we're not acting, if we're not using everything in our power, we're consenting to this.
Not to speak is to speak.
Exactly right. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, right? Right? Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. Not to act is to act. Not to speak is to speak. So education funding, right? We're burning up education funding. Right in the forest, right in the lands, right in the ability to get there. This is on the website. Shirley Dye is sitting right back here from Payson. She wrote this article. You know, talks about you've only got 14 to 16% of your land is available for tax base. You know, an obvious way to increase money available for education and other budget items is to get more land to place under production. Remember that equation again? Right? Governments exist to secure life, liberty, property, self-governance, and with that over here we get peace and prosperity. We can better fund education, better care for our environment, grow our economy. That's how it works. That's where we are. So I want to show you this little video just to kind of lead out. This is, let me see if I can find our mouse. There we go. This is Governor Steve Bullock. He is a Democrat from Montana. This is last year at the Western Governors Association. I want you to pay very careful attention to this because this is not in any way a partisan issue. Caring for our forests and having them be productive is not, nor should it be, a partisan issue. Taking renewable resource and responsibly utilizing our other resources to fund education, care for sick and poor, and roads and public safety is not, nor should it be, a partisan issue. Growing our economy locally and nationally is not, nor should it be, a partisan issue. Pay attention to this if you would.